Welcome to the first live stream that I've done from Japan. I am here in Tokyo right now, and I wanted to check. I see Mark is online here. Hello, Mark. Um, I got a new microphone here, and I have it attached to my phone. I'm not sure if you can hear me okay. Also, my phone is showing some kind of orientation and is locked and wants me to like rotate my phone or something. So I'm not sure what that's about. Is everything okay? Does everything look good? Let me see. Oh, there's some settings. Okay. I think everything. Let's see all messages. Okay. I can hear you and you're sideways. Ah, okay. Excellent. Let's see here. Don't have a proper. Is that better? Thanks, Seamus. I got that stupid air conditioner in the shot. Okay, I think we should be good now. So, great. Okay, so I am here in Tokyo and I wanted to talk a little bit about a few things related to spirituality and esotericism in Japan. And I don't have like a formal structure. This isn't like a prepared lecture or anything. It's just an informal discussion that we can talk about various different subjects. Um, so, to start off with, I might as well get into it here. Feel free to ask any questions as well. Um, so, in Japan, it is an the the main belief system that they have here is Shintoism. That is the native religion here. There is also an indigenous, you know, an extra indigenous tribe called the Ainu. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it properly, but they live mainly in Hokkaido, the most northern prefecture within Japan, and they have their own culture. It's separate and distinct. And I don't know a ton about that culture, but for the most part, in main Japan, the main belief system is Shintoism, and that is an animist religion. So what that means is that they believe that there is some sort of a soul or a spirit within everything, and especially within nature, like a mountain will have a spirit or a soul. So, for instance, Fuji is often referred to as Fuji-san. So they give it the honorific of san, like which would be roughly equivalent to Mister. So they say like Mister Fuji. Basically, they refer to it as an entity rather than just some aspect of the terrain, you know. And every mountain has a spirit associated with it that is the indwelling spirit of that mountain, just like your body has its own indwelling spirit as well, or soul, some people will say. I make a distinction between spirit and soul, but for the purpose of this discussion, I'm using them roughly interchangeably. Anonymous boss waved hello. Okay. So Shintoism is the base religion that has been here for a very long time. And like I said, it's animist. So you'll see things like that. It impacts culture in certain ways. Like um, a few years back, I don't know how long ago it was, 5, 10, I don't remember how many years ago, but um, this organizer, Marie Kondo, a Japanese organizer, got very famous for teaching people how to simplify and organize their lives. And one of the things that she would do is if you wanted to try and get rid of an item, but you felt some sort of um, you didn't want to get rid of it, you felt an attachment to it, she had this sort of a ritual that you could do in order to get rid of it by saying something along the lines of um, I value the service that you provided, but I no longer require that service. It no longer sparks joy. Thank you and goodbye, something like that. And then you could get rid of the item. And that's a representation of treating that item as an entity, as something that has its own soul, like Toy Story or Velveteen Rabbit, kind of touches on that same idea that a beloved object has almost like a life of its own. And they believe that it has a soul, so they treat it accordingly. Now, okay, so, we have a comment here. Calamity Cat says the parallels between Japanese and Native American cultures and spirituality. Yeah, so I am Ojibwe myself, and I find a lot of I believe in the basic premise behind Shintoism. I think that it's a really cool religion. Um, yeah, it has a high level of respect for nature. So you know, they want to keep things clean, and they don't want to pollute, because you're damaging the spirit, the nature spirits, and things like that. So there's a lot of resonance there that I connect with. Um, and ancestors. That's right. Falernam said, sorry, Fallenom. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Fallenom said, hello, and ancestors. That's right. So there's a high level of respect for one's ancestors. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I wanted to say that the other main religion in Japan is Buddhism, and that came later. So that was something that was introduced, and it kind of blended with the already pre-existing Shintoism. So there are a lot of Buddhists in Japan as well, but they tend to also be Shinto. They don't choose between one or the other typically, unless maybe you're a priest or something, and you've dedicated your life to a specific religion. But the normal, regular, average person, um, the normal average person, they believe in both. So they don't feel like they need to choose between Shintoism and Buddhism. There's actually a saying, something along the lines of, and maybe I'm getting this backwards, but people are born Shinto and die Buddhist, or maybe it's the reverse. But the idea is that during different phases of your life, you may focus more or less on one or the other particular tradition. So, Falernam said, I got this name from a black metal name generator, and Seamus said that's how Jeremy got his name too. No, it's my actual name. Uh, Anonymous said, "Hi Jeremy, love your videos. I'd like to know if you astral project. I have an experience going to very low realms. From my experience, I saw a group of what looked like goat-legged human waste. Yeah, I astral project. I feel like it's deeply connected to lucid dreaming, and I do that as well. I've seen all kinds of crazy things while astral projecting and lucid dreaming. I feel like most of that, or all of it really, including the waking experience, is largely symbolic. Um, that what you are experiencing isn't base reality. You're experiencing a symbolic representation of a filtered version of a data stream, really. And that data stream could be coming from your physical sense organs, as in the waking experience, or that data stream could be more subtle, such as based off of recent memories, like in a lot of common dreams, or it could come from what some people call the collective unconscious, deeper wells of symbolism. But yeah, I believe that what you're experiencing is a representation of reality, but in a symbolic way. So, um, let's see, what spirits do they interact with in Japan? They interact with a variety of spirits here. They have um, yokai, which are like almost like ghosts, you could say. They are, I mean, for example, that the famous cartoon called Yokai Watch, where you have a lot of them are trickster entities, and they kind of just go around influencing things. Um, and some of them are like a cat that's lived a really long life, and then now they become a yokai, and when after they die, and things like that. So you have yokai, which are almost like uh, ghosts, or um, low-level trickster type entities. Um, you have oni, which are demons, and some of them are guardian demons, and some of them are not as friendly. In Nobori Betsu, which is up closer to the northern part of Japan, I can't remember if it's actually in Hokkaido or just below, but in Nobori Betsu, they have a lot of hot springs there. It's great if you like hot springs bath. But a lot of the area smells of sulfur. And so this tradition came around that it was the gateway to the underworld or the demonic realm. And so they put up all these statues and uh, art pieces of these oni or demons, and they did that as a way to kind of appease them, and also to honor the specific oni that guarded the gates to that underworld to keep the really bad ones from coming out. So that's kind of an interesting experience that they have, and it's, it's very shamanic in a lot of ways. Um, Appeasing the nature spirits. You have this in Hakone. There is this lake that was formed from an ancient volcanic caldera in the mountains, way up in the mountains there, and it eventually filled up with fresh water. And there's fish in there and everything at this point. But there was the history of that, of the official history and folklore, it's combined, was that there was this dragon that lived in that lake, Lake Ashi, and he would terrorize the local people. And so, what they would do is that they would sacrifice these young women, or young girls, even to appease the dragon. And then this one monk came along and decided he was going to put an end to that. So he sat on a rock just off the shore of the lake and just meditated for, I think it was 3 days straight. And the dragon eventually, through that act, was tamed by him and decided to become a guardian rather than a terror. Rather than a menace, he was going to guard the people. And from that point forward, they didn't have to sacrifice any of their people. Um, and so that's one example of a monk or a spiritual individual using the power of their spiritual practices in order to tame nature spirits that had gone, awry, or that were disruptive or inharmonious. And now they have a big a torii gate in that spot where that monk had meditated for 3 days. And there's a ceremony every year where they set off a bunch of fireworks and lights and lanterns and stuff to celebrate that, and instead of sacrificing, they would do that as a way to keep the dragon happy. Let's see here, some more comments. And so other types of spirits that they have here and entities are, they have people, humans that have attained a certain level of afterlife presence and influence. So these would be Buddhas, for example. So people that have achieved the state of Buddhahood, you could say. I don't. The official term is escaping me right now, but people who have achieved that state and become a Buddha, they have shrines to them, and they honor these individuals and seek guidance and inspiration from them. You also have a bodhisattva, which is very similar, although it is an individual who has pledged to continue to come back to this realm until all sentient beings have achieved enlightenment. So a Buddha can just be off in the pure realms, the Buddha realms, and just kind of be a Buddha there. But a bodhisattva has said that they're going to keep coming back here. They've made a vow, the bodhisattva vow, that they will keep coming back in order to help guide people towards enlightenment. And it's funny, I was actually at the Tokyo National Museum yesterday with my family, my wife and kids, and there were some statues and images of various different entities. And it was funny because sometimes the English translation of some of these things were referring to Buddhas and bodhisattvas as gods. And that is not an accurate translation, because they're not seen as gods. A god is another level of being. So they do believe in gods as well in Shintoism and Buddhism, but they don't necessarily worship them. They will sometimes work with these entities that they refer to as gods, but they see them as just another type of entity that is also on its own journey toward enlightenment. That the god that the various gods are not necessarily enlightened themselves. Um, Whereas a Buddha would be an enlightened being. A bodhisattva would, some people say, just shy of full enlightenment, but I think that that might be a misnomer. They're generally considered to be enlightened as well. But though they're not gods, they are humans that attained a level of enlightenment that they were able to kind of transcend and attain a certain level of immortality, almost like a Taoist immortal. And then, like I said, then there's gods. There's a whole pantheon and hierarchy of various different entities that they believe in Japan, and they don't, and they'll work with them, and they will seek favor, and they will seek to appease, but they don't necessarily worship them. Some people do. There are people who worship certain entities and such, but I think it's more common to see them as other beings, sometimes more powerful or wise in certain areas, and that they can help, or sometimes that they can be disruptive. So there are lots of different ways of working with entities here that they use here in Japan, depending on the type of entity and whether they see it as a disruption or whether they see it as a source of guidance and inspiration. Okay. Okay, so you were lucid during that encounter with those entities that you saw. Yeah, the best thing is to just ask them, what do you represent? What is your purpose? What is your name? And then you can get some more information directly from the entity. Kahan says opinion on the LGBT community. Yeah, so here in Japan, things are changing, but traditionally, LGBT has not been very hasn't been looked on very highly or very well accepted here. It's a very conservative or traditional type of culture, and conformity is considered a value here. So anybody who is different or stands out sometimes can be ostracized. Although, as I said, things are changing a lot. The LGBTQ plus, type people who identify as any of those terms are more and more open about it than they were ever in the past. And so, yeah, it's changing, but it's slow. Things change gradually like that. Seamus says, what do you know about Shugendo? And tell me about the kami and how they are similar to egregores. Okay, well, kami is a word that is often translated as God, but that's a word that gets used a lot when they try and translate the various different types of entities. Shugendo, that is a syncretic religion here in Japan that I hadn't mentioned previously, but it incorporates elements of Shinto and Buddhism. And by the way, the most prevalent form of Buddhism here in Japan is Zen Buddhism. So Shugendo is a religion that it's very interesting. And actually, I saw a whole bunch of artifacts related to Shugendo at the Tokyo National Museum yesterday. I took a bunch of pictures, and I'm gonna, do a bit more research, and I'm gonna make a post or a video about that topic. Another cool thing I saw at the museum was this roughly 3,000-year-old clay sculpture, humanoid form, but has really weird proportions, and it looks almost like it's wearing goggles. And it's referred to, in the English translation at least, as a googly-eyed figure. And you see this figure, um, what are they called again? Dugos, something like that. But they use that figure on like Ancient Aliens, or what does that show? Ancient Aliens, as like evidence of alien presence here on Earth or something, because they're so oddly shaped. Now, the scholarly view of that particular type of sculpture is that they believe, they don't know for sure, but they believe that it is something similar to the Venus type figures, with like a feminine, exaggerated feminine proportions. And they believe that it could be related to some sort of fertility cult, but they don't really know. Anyways, back to Shigendo, I saw a whole bunch of artifacts related to that, and there is a particular god that is associated with that, and I'm trying to remember the name. I don't remember the name of that god, but like I said, I'm gonna do a bit more research, and I'm gonna take a bunch of the photos that I gathered at the museum, and I'm gonna put together a post on Shigendo. But the basic idea behind that is that people will toughen themselves up, in a sense. They will do a lot of nature hiking, especially in the mountains. They will meditate under a cold waterfall, you know. Um, and they are doing this to get closer to nature, but also to strengthen their spirit, to strengthen their resolve and their ability to master themselves. And you can do a lot of this type of stuff without, you know, going into the mountains and such. You can take cold showers, you know, you can have a vigorous workout routine that you stick to. You can do nature hikes. You know, if you do have mountains around you, you can go out into the mountains and meditate in the mountains as well. But that is a huge part of Shigendo. And I know a lot of people who are into martial arts treat it very highly. Can you work with Oni? Yeah, like I said, uh, in Nobori Betsu, for example, they work with the Oni in the sense that they will honor the Oni, and they will put up images, even giant sculptures. They have sometimes these red demons with like clubs and things, and they put those up all over the place. And that's one way to kind of honor those entities, and also to stay in their good graces. So that's just one way that you can work with the Oni. Anonymous Boss said, I have seen a huge guardian snake on another lucid dream. It was pretty cool, but did creep me out at first. Yeah, I had an encounter with an entity that in a lucid dream that I, later thought was perhaps Leviathan, and had a very profound interaction with that entity. It had a huge impact on me, and I had a whole healing process was triggered through it, and there was a cathartic release and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I had a really powerful experience in a lucid dream with a large serpent. It was actually a water serpent. Um, Jace says hi. Hello, Jace. Can you say hi back, please? Just did. Following on what brought you to Japan. Yeah, a Boeing 747, I think it was. But seriously, um, I've been interested in Japanese culture for a long time, and I thought it was fascinating. My wife as well, and we came here about 5 years ago and brought our son, who was 5 at the time, and it had a huge impact on him, and he became really into uh, learning about Japan and learning the language, and so uh, we encouraged it. We said, yeah, if you're really into that, we can help you learn more, and we'll support your studies. And he's learned a lot of Japanese. He spent a lot of time. We hired tutors from Japan to teach him the Japanese language online and such, and he's gotten really good at it. And so now we came back again for another visit or another trip last year, and then again this year. This is we've been here five weeks. We're coming back to Canada in a couple days. Right now it's morning here in Japan. It's like 11:30 or so in the morning on Sunday, and we're going back Tuesday evening. Okay. I looked into Taoism, and I am just not for right hand paths. Yeah, typically a lot of these religions are considered by a lot of people as right hand path, but there are a lot of teachings that can be utilized by those who travel left hand path, such as, for instance, in Taoism. The ultimate goal is to become a Taoist immortal. How is that right hand path? Yeah, sure, you harmonize yourself with the forces of nature, but ultimately you, as an individual, become an immortal being. That's the end goal of Tao. How left hand path is that? So and in Buddhism, there's a lot of, if you're a monk, for example, there's a lot of kind of renouncing of worldly things, but and asceticism. In Shigendo, there's asceticism as well, but it's done with a very intentional purpose. It's not to kind of check out; it's more to connect. But anyways, in Buddhism, a lot of the time, people, the idea is to, you know, connect with your own Buddha nature, not to just dissolve yourself into, you know, well, there's different paths within all of them, and you can find left-hand path type teachings within a lot of different religions that are generally considered right-hand path, I would say, for sure. Thelema is considered a right-hand path. Crowley himself said Thelema was a right-hand path, and he denied being left-hand path at all. He said, I'm not left-hand path, I'm right-hand path. And you still have tons and tons of left-hand path practitioners studying Thelema and learning things from that they apply to their own practice. So you can do the same with other religions that are, for the most part, generally considered right-hand path, for sure. Following on says aliens, LOL. Soda Pop 1744, is this live? Seamus answered yes until later. Yeah, later on it will be available as an archived video that you can watch on your own time, but right now it's live. What's up with the long hair? Is that part of a mirror that you are creating? I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. It's just my hair. It's my real hair. It's not kind of any kind of illusion or smoke and mirrors type thing. I don't know what you're getting at. Following on, are you eclectic in your beliefs? Yeah, definitely. I value truth where I find it, and I'm willing to learn from any source of information that I come across. Whether I agree with the vast majority of something, I could still take nuggets of wisdom and things that apply to me and my path, regardless. Okay. Soda pop, like if I grow my hair out, will we Bluetooth with one another? Probably not. Nocturnal Frequency Radio, evening, Jeremy. Hey, hey, Steve. I assume it's Steve. How's it going? The Occult Corner, that's awesome, man. Hey, Occult Corner, good to see you on here. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just connecting with my phone because I don't have my PC here or my laptop. But I got this Rode microphone. You can see here, and I just have it connected via USB-C to USB-C on my phone. I'm hopefully it's the one that's what's picking up the mic or the audio. And hopefully you got a good quality audio on this video. But either way, when I get home and I use my PC, then I'll be using this as well too. So the ancestors. So another thing that's interesting. Oh, yeah, there's so many different topics that I can touch on, but the ancestors. One of the interesting things is that there will be practices that you can do to assist your ancestors that have passed over, into helping them achieve immortality, helping them achieve enlightenment, that sort of thing. And one of the ways that they can do that is by keeping a shrine to their ancestor. And that is, you know, in Western terms, that would be referred to as a form of necromancy, really, working with the ancestors. Um, it's a very personal form that you have a direct connection. But also, you are not only asking for help from the ancestors. That's not that's not even the biggest thing necessarily. I'll unplug it to find out. Yeah, I could. Yeah, let's see. Let's give this a try. Okay, so that's unplugged. Was there any change in the audio quality? Um, we'll have to find out, and I'll just plug it back in now. It's a little stiff. Oh, there we go. Oh, there was a change in the audio quality. Hopefully it's back, and we're not just stuck on the bad one. It's quieter without it. Oh, good. Louder with the mic. Great. I'm glad to hear that it actually works. Okay, way better. Excellent. Okay, so one of the things that you want to help your ancestors achieve immortality in the afterlife. And so one of the things you can do, like I said, is keep a shrine toward for them. You can that could be either at a graveyard where there you go and visit their grave, and so I've seen people leave little things of sake, rice wine on the graves, various different offerings like flowers, of course. Incense is a very popular offering to the ancestors. Also, I've seen individuals have a statue created for that ancestor in order to help them achieve immortality. And I find that fascinating because it's very similar to the idea of feeding an entity in the afterlife, or feeding an egregore even. An egregore being an artificially created spirit, and it relies on the energy or attention of living people generally in order to at least get to a certain point where it's self-sustaining. But you can also feed the spirit or soul of a departed loved one. And one way to do that is by creating a statue, and then that statue will get attention You know, anytime people pay attention to that statue, you're essentially feeding the ancestor. And I find that fascinating as one of the methods in order to support the immortality of that ancestor. So another interesting thing that's related is the samurai culture. So the samurai, of course, everybody's heard of a samurai, but at one point, Japan was under a type of monarchy, and then that monarchy started to, at one point, change the laws where a lot of the farmers had to sell their land to land barons and become serfs. So it was a feudal system that was instituted by the monarchy. The feudal lords, called the daimyo, or maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, daimyo, something like that. They would hire samurai, warriors, to protect the lands and enforce the taxes and things like that. Some of them were related to the land barons, the daimyo, and some of them were just hired swords or hired muscle. And eventually, that system got so powerful, these land barons got so powerful that they essentially took over the government. The emperor, the monarch, he became just, they didn't get rid of him entirely, he just became a symbolic figurehead, and the real power was in the top samurai warlord that they called the shogun. And so you had the shogun, which is like the top guy, and then you had a bunch of daimyo, which were like the land barons, and then you had all the samurai, and they had a very high status in the culture, and you know, and then you had the merchants and the farmers and such. So it was essentially a military dictatorship that took over in place of the monarchy. And so what ended up happening is you had these swords. So that's my transition. That's my a way of transitioning to this topic here. So you had these swords, these samurai swords that were extremely high quality, and the amount of work and effort that went into this is incredible because they didn't have rich sources of iron ore to smelt and create the metal. They had to actually get iron sand from the rivers where, and they realized that on a bend that the heavier iron particles would collect in those kind of bends, and so they ended up creating these artificial bends where they could go and they could collect the sand and they could get the iron out of that, and that's how they got their iron to make these swords. And it's this whole process. But anyways, the master craftsmen, the master blacksmiths that would create these swords for the samurai would often imprint their signature on the part that goes inside the handle of the sword. And then when you would, if you needed to replace the handle or whatever, you could see who created that sword. Often was on that part that is normally hidden inside the sword. But one of the interesting things about these swords is that the samurai would generally have two or three, sometimes four swords, but generally they would have at least two. They would have a long one, and they would have a smaller one that was more like a dagger. And they would carry those two swords. Sometimes they'd have a third one in their shirt as like a smaller one, as an emergency, just in case. something happened and they needed to act quickly and they didn't have their other swords on them at the time, like when they're, you know, chilling out. And also that small one would also be used to commit harikuri, where if they were uh, shamed or defeated or had to kind of regain the honor to to their family or um, their allegiance, whatever, they would commit suicide um, with that smaller sword. But um, anyway, so you'd have the long one and you'd have a smaller one, and then you might have a dagger tucked in your shirt as well. And sometimes you'd had a second long one. Either way, these swords were, you would keep them forever basically. And each samurai, that collection of their swords that they would have, that those swords were said to almost be like the soul of the samurai. And so um, they would be kept after the samurai passed on, and they would be honored. And they would be, that would almost be like the statue that I mentioned earlier that would be made of somebody in order to help them achieve immortality. And in a way, it's like an external physical body that the soul has to reside in and have an influence on the world. And these swords still exist. A lot of these swords are still around and they're kept in good condition. And you can see a lot of them at various different museums and such. And that is supposed to be the soul of that samurai. And sometimes they were put on in a shrine after the death of that particular samurai that used and held onto these swords at all times when, you know, when they were alive. So that's a really interesting thing that I find, that you know, the different paths to immortality and the idea that the soul can be infused into a physical object that will outlast the physical body. These artifacts. Okay, let's see here. Soda Pop says a cosmic game written by Stanislav Grof is a good read for anyone looking for a source of information to cross-reference. In relation to what exactly? Soda Pop also said, I liked your video on Lucifer you did several years ago. Cool, thank you. Yeah, I've done a bunch of them, so I'm not sure which specific one you're referring to, but either way, I appreciate the kind words. I always like to hear if people enjoyed my videos or not. So what other topics can we touch on here? I don't want to go on for too much longer. I plan to have roughly about an hour, so roughly about another like 10 minutes or so. If you have any questions, go ahead. Oh, Nocturne says, hey from Long Island. Hey from Tokyo, Japan. um, okay. What other topics was I going to cover today? I got through most of um, the really interesting one, or the things that really kind of stood out to me as interesting, at least. Um, oh, the Occult Corner. I'm still trying to set aside some cash for a shirt. Oh, I appreciate that, Occult Corner. Nocturne has a question. Go for it. Go for it. Soda Pop says the theory of relativity states that you can be in two places at the same time. The year is currently 1734. So what happens in 1744, which is the number that's in your username? Is that happening too? Time is an interesting concept to talk about. We don't have enough time to get into it right now, but yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in the scientific community right now regarding whether time is fundamental or if it is just an artifact of the way that our brains produce an experience. Nocturne. Can pre-Christian paganism be blended with theistic Satanism? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. For one thing, a lot of the gods of ancient pagan traditions were considered demons when the Christians came along, and now there's entire demonolatry practices devoted to these various ancient pagan gods, and it includes the the effect on the egregore that that demonization had, and tries to acknowledge that that happened, and the effect that it might have had on that entity, that god. But yeah, there's a lot of you can definitely incorporate elements of pre-Christian paganism in your theistic satanic practice for sure. The Occult Corner said, "What are your favorite occult channels on YouTube?" Ah, well, one I don't know if it's an occult channel, but one of the channels that I've been really enjoying lately, especially lately, is the Y Files. They cover some interesting topics that are kind of offbeat or controversial, and they will AJ and his fish co-host Hecklefish, they will cover the topic initially as it's presented in the folklore, you know, the way that it's been presented, and they'll explain that, and then at the end they'll go through and say, well, how much of it can be verified, how much of it can be debunked, and then they'll go through it that way, which I find a very entertaining approach. And it tells you what is how it's being presented by the people who believe these ideas, or who are putting these theories and ideas out there, and then it tells you, well, how much of it can be proven, how much of it are we pretty sure is false, and that kind of thing. It's a really cool channel. I don't know if it's necessarily occult. We have Nocturnal Frequency on here, that had come in earlier, and that's a really cool channel that I think is needs more attention. They talk a lot about various different paranormal subjects, and I've been a guest on that show a handful of times, and yeah, I feel like that people are sleeping on that. They need to check it out. Of course, your channel, The Occult Corner, is great, but you don't need me to recommend your channel to you. But anybody else here, check out The Occult Corner. Let's see here. Oh, okay, it's official science that our brains have quantum effects falling on. Yeah, I agree. It's a very interesting field to look into. Soda Pop says demon is a derogatory term used by ignorant individuals. Well, uh, it has become a derogatory term, you could say, but originally the word demon came from the ancient Greek daimon, which was more like a guardian spirit that was associated with an individual, usually almost like their holy guardian angel. It's that whole concept kind of derived, the holy guardian angel concept has roots in the word daimon, or daimon. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but basically the word demon with an extra letter, an extra vowel in there, and then it eventually became demon when the Christians came along. But the word also was roughly back in the day, like a long time ago. The word daimon was roughly equivalent to the word genius, which also nowadays has a different meaning too. Now it just means a really smart person, but back then it meant essentially like a spirit that was associated with an individual generally, and would be a guardian to them and an inspiration to them. And yeah, so if you look back at the roots of the word demon, then it had a really good meaning. But it's just in modern parlance, it means something bad, But a lot of people that work with demons, um, they don't use it in a derogatory way. They mean it in a more, they're just using, some people say, why bother using that term now? But, it's like kind of reclaiming it. Nocturne has another question, perhaps a sensitive one. Using an esoteric mindset, what causes transgenderism in people? Um, I don't know. But I do know that in esotericism, there is a lot of work towards uniting the masculine and feminine aspects of the self within the self. The In Hermeticism, it's referred to as the chemical wedding, or the alchemical wedding sometimes. Um, in Gnosticism, it's referred to as um, there's a Gnostic sacrament that I can't remember the specific term for, but it essentially is the same thing, and it was usually done near the point of when the person thought that they were getting ready to die, and they would perform this sacrament that would try to unite the masculine and feminine aspects within themselves. And the idea of Baphomet is the Baphomet is a symbolic representation of that fusion of opposites, or the poles, the various different poles. So God and beast, fused together, uh, male and female fused together. So that's all I kind of want to say on that. I may be relevant, maybe not relevant whatsoever. Let's see. Soda Pop says it's 2024, Jeremy. Yes, I am aware of the current Gregorian calendar date. The occult current corner says Socrates had a diamond. That's right. It's a very interesting thing to look. That's something you could look into if you want to learn more about that term and its original use. Hollywood, yeah, had a lot of negative impacts on trying to make things seem scarier or exciting or exaggerated. That's for sure. And that has a big impact on the collective consciousness, the collective idea and folklore, modern folklore. A lot of that modern folklore is just movies and stuff. Let's see here. Okay. Yep. So I think we've covered all the questions we have. Anybody who has any last final thoughts that they want me to bring up or anything like that, now is the time, because otherwise I'm going to wrap things up here. I appreciate everybody who showed up to this live stream today. I wanted to try and get a live stream in before I came back home. I've been here 5 weeks and just been so busy pretty much every single day that I haven't had a chance to actually get a live stream in here, but managed to do it today, and in just a couple days I'm coming back to Canada, and I've got a chance to use this new mic which I'm happy about. And because previously, last couple videos that I did live streams for, people said that the audio wasn't the best, so I managed to pick this up here. It's a really high end. It's not like super insane pro quality, but it's way better than what I had before. So I got a chance to use that, and thank you guys for helping me test it out. And yeah, everybody who came, Mark, Sharon, hope to see you in Toronto soon. Jeremy, yeah, absolutely, we'll get together, and Mark is going to be a guest on my channel here soon, and that'll be really fun. So keep an eye out for that. The Occult Corner said, "Peace be with you, Jeremy. Peace be with you too, Occult Corner." And everybody, as I said, thank you so much for joining me on today's live stream. And there's a lot of content coming. We're going to do a bunch of live streams. I'm going to put together pre-recorded videos. If you want to get access to some exclusive teachings and content, I highly recommend you check out the Novus Ordo Luciferi, and you can go to novusordoluciferi.org to find out how to get involved with that. And on that note, until next time, everyone, stay lucid.